Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and, as a courtesy, via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if tech problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. This meeting is being recorded by the local scene, formerly known as pac-tv. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by viewing the Duxbury Government Access channels, Verizon 39, Comcast 9. Viewers can visit the localscene.media/Duxbury for information about Duxbury programming, including streaming and watching replays on Duxbury YouTube. Good evening. Would you like to call your meeting to order, Mike?
I would, thank you. I call our meeting to order.
There you go, and done well, sir. We are now moving forward. We have covered the educational budget. We've covered last week's budgets for the public safety. And tonight we have got the DPW team here. Sheila Scarzi, who is the head of that department, who I think you all know, will be leading off. And the way we're going to do it is a little bit different. Linda's trying to get a screenshot up there with the budget, but I'm going to just be asking her to explain the line items that have got a significant change. If there is an expense change in the 5B budget of under $1,000, and it's just because prices went up, I'm happy to ask questions, or you can ask questions if you'd like, but I was going to just kind of move to the riffs and things that might have some more substance. Is that okay with the select board?
Just to be clear, that's the Article 5B, the override budget.
Yes, the override budget is what we're discussing in the changes in the 5B that are under $1,000 for expenses. Happy to discuss them, but for the sake of moving through, perhaps it's okay if we don't. Brian, you've got a face on. Would you rather me do it?
I'm listening carefully.
You're listening carefully.
We're good. We're all good here.
We're all good? Okay, great. And if there's, as you follow along on your thing, if there's something obviously that you've got a question about, Sheila's more than happy and her team to answer. All right, Sheila, why don't you start, and we'll be starting with Central Building Services, just to follow along the.
All right, just to.
Yes. Oh, you know what? A friend has reminded me, rightly so, to be polite. And it would be nice if you introduced your team for the purposes of the filming.
So I'm Sheila Scarzi, I'm the DPW director. With me are my 4 DPW department heads. We have Jim Savonin, who is the manager of buildings and grounds. We have Norm Smith, he's the operations manager, so highway, vehicle maintenance.
Could you bring your mic a little closer?
Oh, sorry. So highway, vehicle maintenance, and the transfer station fall under Norm. Then we have Chip Lockheady, who oversees cemetery and crematory. And Mark Cloud, thank you for being here, Mark. He just came in fresh off of a water main break on Alden Street, and Mark is the water and sewer superintendent.
Welcome.
So his feet are a little wet?
Not yet.
Probably frozen. So,
Frozen and wet. Oh, good.
So this is water main break number 2 this week. So we've had a rough go of it. This can happen in extreme cold temperatures. It's not uncommon, unfortunately. Our crews have been through a lot over the past week, some long nights.
So why don't we go along, and if appropriate, you can bring in members of your team to discuss any of the changes, but we'll just start from there, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure. And I have detailed line item breakdowns here in my various spreadsheets, so if anyone wants to dive into anything more, by all means, we can go into it.
So Central Building,
Betsy, just one final, sorry to interrupt.
No.
I appreciate that. Just an opportunity, if members of the audience, people attending here, they want to ask any questions as well for clarity purposes.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll just do it and but I would just ask if the questions pertain to the people presenting this evening. as, you know, we've brought them in to discuss. So if there's meetings on another department that is not presenting this evening, if you could hold those to the end, I would appreciate that, just so that these folks we can get through their presentation. All right, Sheila.
And go home.
And go home. Yes, and get his wet boots off.
That's right.
Yeah,
All right, expenses is the biggest change there, so
Yeah, so central buildings, that's actually one of Jim's sub-departments. So we only have one salary under that department, that's a custodian. We also have a custodian of the clock, which is a stipend. There's a clock on Washington Street in a church that the custodian of the clock takes care of. So there's not much to talk about on the salary side. Expenses, this is one of the, well, pretty much all of the 14 DPW budgets are very tight. That was something I was surprised about when I first came to Duxbury. Just there's almost no wiggle room in any of these budgets. So if something happens out of the ordinary, there's no mechanism to fund it. So it's very stressful to try to manage these budgets, and you know, you never want to go over when you're managing a budget. So oftentimes we go without. So when we looked at this proposed departmental needs budget, we saw that central buildings is one of those budgets that has always, we've spent right up to the top. So we asked to add an increase of $11,200 just to fund repairs, maintenance services, utilities, and maintenance to reflect the actual needs in those buildings. And the central buildings consist of the 2 town hall buildings and the DPW buildings.
okay. Any questions? All set? Okay. Tarkin is one of the ones that's under $1,000. It's just a utilities increase. Animal control is combined a little over 1,000, and maybe for Eddie, the additional hours and the supplies.
Yeah, so there's not too much to talk about on that animal control budget. It's a small budget. One thing worth noting, though, is Eddie Ramos does work off of a donation account for a lot of his expenses. So while we see that budget is, $8,000, there's a lot more that goes into it that he pulls from that donation account. Fortunately, he's been very successful at obtaining grants and donations for the care of animals. So it's been consistent over the years, but it is something I like to point out because that budget isn't reflecting the full expenses in that department.
Just as an aside, are tracking the full expenses, what the donations cover? So
Yes.
if indeed that source of funds was gone, we'd have an idea of what we were
Yes.
looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's something we're always watching.
Sheila, how much is that, how much does the
I
amount?
want to say, if I could pull up my correct spreadsheet, I want to say it was in the $15,000 range last year.
So
but-
we have, the town residents contribute $15,000 a year to
Well, it's
animal-
not necessarily town residents, but it could be. There's different organizations.
Oh, different organizations, okay.
So,
Grants in there as well.
Grants
Yes.
as well?
Yep.
Okay,
And animals don't live there full-time.
yeah.
They're just, I believe I might have had a felon that was there once, and that they get picked up and they go and stay.
Yeah. Depending on the situation, last year we had one that was there for, I think it was more than 8 months.
Oh,
So,
wow.
But most of the time it's short-term, so.
Okay.
How many employees do we have in that department?
So we have Eddie Ramos, who's the animal control officer. I think he's been with the town over 19 years. And Susan Curtis is a town resident. She's a part-time animal control officer. And they do have volunteers, too, that help out.
So the salaries cover the full-time and part-time?
Yeah, well, you see that little increase in the salaries, so that's to make sure we have enough for coverage for Eddie's vacation time and sick
That's fine,
time.
yep.
So
All right,
that's
thank
why
you.
that's gone up a little bit.
Okay. Lands and natural resources. This one is a little more conversation, as there was a restoration of a roof and a discussion on overtime. Sheila?
Yeah, so this, we have a current vacancy in that department, a skilled laborer. So that was one of the positions that was identified under the option one budget as a cut. Obviously, we would like to restore that. The Lands and Natural Resources Department takes care of an extraordinary amount of greens in this town. It's shocked me, again, when I came here, that they take care of so much, take care of pretty much most of the school fields, correct?
All the shared fields.
Yes, all the shared fields, parks, they do all the roadside mowing, town hall, traffic islands, there's a lot that they do. They're very busy, and we definitely need the help. So that was actually in the option one budget that I had proposed to try to meet that 2.5%. I had identified that position as a cut, but just it's been a long-standing vacancy. But in lieu of that, I had requested a part-time seasonal position to try to make up for that. But ideally, we'd like that full-time position because this department is also the department that's responding to tree calls during storms. So they are extremely essential. When you need them, and we want to have a full complement of staff there, so.
Okay. And then the expenses as well?
This is another budget that has been perennially too low, I would say. Just the cost of fertilizer and seed, that it's going up. And if the town wants the fields to appear the way they do, we need to invest the money.
Was this the department that you explained to us that there wasn't enough funding, that if a piece of equipment such as a trimmer or a saw was damaged or broken, that you did not have money to replace it?
Correct. The budget has been historically that tight in this department that they would forego buying essential equipment. So.
Just curious, I had the same thought about another department last meeting. Are there ways the select board can help to, or that your departments come up with other ideas to kind of either alleviate some of this work or other than money, and just or focus some of this work? I mean, it seems like you're all over town doing a lot with a very small staff. Has there been any of previous select boards on how to make it easier for you?
Mike, are you volunteering at all?
Other than throwing you a trimmer
gonna mow
when
there,
mine
Mike,
kicks
or?
out or something. It's just it seems I hear things that are impractical, like the fields, like we tend to overuse them here in town. And just wondering if any other ideas have come up. I know we throw a lot, at you. Just wondering if there's any way we can help as a select board, or if ideas have been batted around to make this more efficient and provide the services, but not just burn you folks up because you're doing 6 things at the same time.
That's a tough one. I did recently have a high school student reach out asking if they could help take care of some of our fields and assist with some landscaping. In theory, that sounds wonderful. However, you have to consider liability.
Yeah.
We also have a union, so you have to be careful about taking away union work. But I mean, liability would be my primary concern in that regard. But it's certainly something we could explore, but it would have to be vetted through the union to do it correctly.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
If there's a way we can help, I'm all ears. The town's gotten bigger, more challenging, so if there are ideas, speak up. I'm happy to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a little bit of it here with the garden club. The garden club has these beautiful arrangements at different intersections. So that seems to be something that's working very well. But in terms of the field maintenance,
Anything, I
that's-
mean, I know you do tree work all around town, you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
And everybody is, I mean, you're all killing yourselves, so.
Okay.
I can see the
So-
select board on scared motors.
I'm up for it.
Well, look,
It was a lovely gesture, and I understand where you're
Yeah, I
coming
know,
from.
just-
And I'm thinking that you're talking in terms of efficiencies of better equipment that would make the work go faster and advocating for that type of efficiency. And certainly, those are conversations that Alex
down
would
the
be
road.
having with them and down the road.
we just usually don't get these folks in here, so
Nope, it's.
we're seeing their budget,
I speak Mike, I got it.
I have a question, Madam
Absolutely.
Chair. So the town is fortunate to have lots of land and natural resources, right?
Yeah.
And we know Jim and the crew is out keeping on top of everything. My question is, where are the distinctions between what we call town land versus conservation land versus some other jurisdiction? And where I'm going is, do we have in this budget sufficient resources to care for all the land that the town has purchased? So for example, CPA, which is a terrific tool that we use, we acquire land, but I want to make sure that we can take care of the stuff that we've bought. So trail maintenance, for example, I know that's conservation, but I'm not exactly sure where the lines are and where the resources need to be allocated.
Yeah, so Jim may be able to speak more on that. My understanding is we assist when we can. Conservation does have, I think it's a part-time staff member that works on trail maintenance, but we try to help out when we can, where we can. One of the other things that Jim's crew does is trash removal throughout town. So you see the trash receptacles with the blue bags. They're at the beach, they're at the conservation areas, they're dealing with the trash as well. It's a varied department, what they do. I don't know, Jim, if you have anything to add about the conservation trails and how much work that is?
We help out, like Sheila said, we help out as needed.
If you know what, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, but it would be great if you could, because they're taping and they won't be able to hear you, that's all.
We help out on the conservation areas as we can. We do turn around, we prioritize what is first for them, prior to us. But we're constantly helping them, and
Yeah. That's okay, go ahead,
All right,
fine.
but you have, for the expenses, we think we have enough in here to take care of what we need to take care of.
Yeah.
Right, but like, we're not gonna let stuff fall into disrepair. And I'm not picking out anything in particular, but I'm thinking, we have lots of land, and it requires maintenance. Even the stuff that is passive recreation requires maintenance, tree clearing, that sort of stuff, so,
most of the stuff for our conservation, when we lend a hand, it's just labor.
okay.
We bring our own equipment in, we do the work, and then we just get right back out of there for
Yeah.
them. Clear the trails, the walking trails for them, whatever we have to do.
Okay,
So,
great. Thanks very much.
you're welcome.
Jim, how many people are in your department?
If I was fully staffed, I'd have 7.
Okay.
But minus that laborer's position, I'm down to 6.
And how long has that position been vacant?
I'm not quite sure exactly, but it hasn't been the same labor spot open. The vacancy hasn't been the same spot forever. We
Right.
had, our toughest one was when we were looking for a tree cutter. We finally got a tree cutter, and then one of my operators retired on me, so our labor moved up, and the labor spot became vacant now.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Thank you.
anything else?
I have a quick question about the shared fields. Does that also include turf fields?
No, that is a school field.
That is school fields, okay.
The share fields are mostly train field and baseball. Do you do the baseball and you do the soccer fields over by Chandler, yeah?
Yes, Chandler baseball, Chandler soccer, overall, and train.
Yep.
And you have the Franklin fields too, right? And the baseball fields over by Keene and all that?
Gage Street are the town fields.
Yep.
Okay, beautiful. There was no changes to central fuel and your DPW administration, Sheila?
Yeah, so that was another one of the cuts, staff cuts under the option 1 budget. That is not a vacant position currently, so that would be our office manager position. So this is a critical position in our day-to-day operation in the DPW office. So this person is processing payroll, they're answering phones, they're assisting with grant applications, they're also overseeing the other administrative staff. That's actually a management position within the administrative staff. So we've gotten a little taste of what happens when there's no one in that position, because the person in that position was actually out on leave for the summer. And what happens is, you try to spread the work around as much as possible. But I can tell you, I ended up doing quite a bit of the work, which isn't the best use of your DPW director's time, which meant I just worked more hours to make up for doing the other work. So, that will have a major impact. Processing payroll, we have 51 positions in the DPW. It's very important that people get paid and paid correctly. So that is very concerning, the potential loss of that position. And residents will feel that because there may be times when there's no one available to answer phones. I'm not always in the office. I can be in the field. I could be doing a number of things. So in terms of our administrative staff in the DPW, we have that office manager. We have a full-time administrative assistant. We have a part-time administrative assistant, and the water department has a full-time administrative assistant. And that is something I do want to revisit, just that organizational structure once we move to the new DPW facility, when we're all in one building, just to see how everything works. Honestly, I'm not overly happy with the way that structure works. I don't think it's very functional that we have a head administrative assistant with other assistants under her. I think it would be more functional if we assigned administrative assistants to each individual department. But I want to see how that evolves. So,
Sheila, could I just touch base on something I think I heard you just say, which is that the full-time position that you're looking for funding for is a managerial position, and that they handle payroll for the department? So each department does its own payroll. We don't have a centralized, like HR doesn't do payroll for all the departments?
no.
Each department sends in their own hours for the people that are in their department to a centralized payroll group. So they're not cutting the checks, but they do have to feed the information for hourly employees as to what absenteeism and the hours that they worked.
Yeah.
That would be within the departments.
So in DPW, the payroll can get very complicated this time of year with snow and ice, with overtime. So actually, it's not just that office manager position, the other administrative assistants assist with payroll. And frankly, our department heads do too. So it's a combined effort. But that office manager, her position is to oversee all of that and send that to the accounting department for processing.
Well, thank you. I actually just learned something. I had thought that payroll was predominantly almost 100% handled by HR. And so I'm hearing that the departments have to handle a significant portion of the payroll.
It is a lot of work, and you don't want to make mistakes with payroll. You don't want to incorrectly mark someone as having taken a vacation day when they didn't. You don't want to calculate overtime incorrectly. We have a bi-weekly pay system, so if something is done incorrectly, that impacts people's livelihood. So
But it's not
an
just
important function.
DPW, it's the police do it that way,
Yeah.
the fire department, everyone, because they're the ones that understand what's actually, who's working what shift and.
But
and
it's
everything.
the hours that we're talking about, right? But hours that folks are working there, and then that gets input into the,
They're-
I presume PeopleSoft or something that's managed by
Well,
the HR department, right?
Hours would be, I think, the most susceptible to it,
Yeah.
but Rainey can probably
Yeah, maybe.
speak better to
Payroll,
this.
payroll in this town historically has been run through the accounting office for years, decades. That's where the payroll specialist is. HR doesn't do the payroll. They do the payroll for their own department, but each department head is in charge of assigning a person to provide the payroll for that different department. Fire does it, police, our office, and then it all gets shipped over to the accounting office.
Okay.
Which I think we purchased some software a number of town meetings ago to help with that process and streamline.
Yeah, it all still requires manual entry, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, DPW, oh, sorry, Ted.
I got a couple of
Yeah.
emails that some people are having trouble on Zoom, and I think it has to do with speaking into the mics. So they mentioned, they said they were having trouble hearing you, Sheila. So I think if you speak into the mic, whether you're
Okay.
talking down this way or not.
Maybe I should angle it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful. All right, did you want to go over the MS4 permit services?
Yeah,
The
so,
change
so
in
the,
that?
the MS4 permit, this is an EPA stormwater permit. All municipalities have to comply with this. Most municipalities hire a consultant to assist with this. We do in Duxbury. There is quite a bit of in-house work that goes along with this. Our highway department has to do in terms of catch basin cleaning and logging the removal of catch basin, cleaning street sweepings. So this is something we have to do. And there's, in the option one budget, we had cut back on it. And the idea was that there's certain year permit thresholds or targets we need to meet each year. So there was an item that we had 2 years to comply with, so we were kicking it down the road in the option one budget. But under option two, we're proposing to get it done next year. So that's the difference there. So that will continue to appear in our budget because it's necessary for that
Can we
EPA
just go
permit.
back to the the administration, the top line there? There's,
Yep.
what is the OSHA safety officer required? What is that under license stipends?
Yes, so that's a proposed stipend for one of our DPW managers to oversee our OSHA safety compliance. So I'm sure you're aware, towns now fall under OSHA. There is quite a bit to running a safety program. There's always more we can do to improve safety, but we have to be very cognizant of that. Tonight's an example with the water main break. You still have to make sure you're doing everything OSHA compliant, that people have the proper PPE on, you have your trench boxes, so, and we need to make sure we're doing those toolbox talks. So there's that component, and also that stipend, proposed stipend would include that person being a CDL trainer. We're having a very big problem attracting staff, and one of the main issues is just about all of our DPW jobs require a CDL license. The CDL licensure process has changed recently, and it costs between $6,000 and $9,000 to obtain a CDL license. You're hiring people in at $23 an hour. Most of them don't have that kind of money to obtain that license, and these are job requirements. So we're trying to figure out a way to to train them in-house to get these licenses so they don't have to spend that money out of pocket.
Okay, so I'm glad that you do have a OSHA safety officer in your organization, that you're doing the toolbox talks,
Yeah.
you're making sure that you're doing all the right things to protect the safety of our employees.
Well, we don't have that right now, so we do have a consultant safety net that provides us toolbox talks, but there isn't a central person to consolidate that and make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's why I would propose that stipend, because safety is paramount. We
Correct.
never want to see somebody get hurt.
Correct. Thank you.
But right now, that position is being covered by an outside consultant?
It's not being covered, so not everything is getting done that should be getting done.
All set?
Yes.
Vehicle maintenance, there was a a rift there?
Yes, so full staff vehicle maintenance has 3 mechanics. So under the option 1 budget, we were looking at the loss of one of the mechanic positions. Currently, because staffing appears to be a perennial problem these days, we are not full staff right now. We are actually down 7 positions. So we're getting a little preview of what this option 1 budget could look like for us, and it's not pleasant. So we happen to be down 1 mechanic right now, and what we're seeing is we have to send more vehicles out for repairs. So that costs more money. You have, if somebody's sick or we need them for something else, then you have a safety issue because you don't want just 1 mechanic working in a garage by themselves. They could get hurt and no one would know about it. So that's a vital position in the town. The mechanics fix the police cars. You have to keep that fleet running. You know, police cars are running 24/7. It's very important. They fix all of our DPW vehicles. They're essential during a snow and ice activity. Almost every time we have a plowing or sanding event, something goes down, equipment breaks, so you have to have the mechanics in. Only having 2 mechanics, that's a lot on them. And we are experiencing right now, I think Norm just sent me a purchase order for $12,000 to repair a loader. So we're seeing the impacts.
Are we seeing any savings in the past few years with, I know we're sitting in snow right now, but and I was going to get to this about the snow and ice. I know you've not asked for any more money, but where we're having less major storms, are we seeing any savings with, just not having the storms?
We are, which people probably don't realize, we're up to snow and ice event number 13 already this year. Even though you've only seen 1 plowable snow event, people don't realize how often we have to go out and salt the town. So there's a lot more behind the scenes that happens that people don't realize. Obviously, it does depend on the weather. If we have a winter with a lot of blizzards, we will exceed that budget. Last year, we didn't. We don't know what's going to happen this year. We've been burning through quite a bit of salt this year, just the way the weather has been.
Are we chucking any of the salt because of the storage situation right now, or?
No.
Okay.
No, salt is very valuable to us, so we never want to waste it. No, we've actually set up the DPW facility project strategically, even though the DPW, Norm and Jim staff are going to move to the Tar Kiln building during construction. We are keeping the salt shed up.
Yeah.
They will tear it down this summer when construction starts, but that, per the contract, it needs to be operational. The new shed needs to be in place and accessible to us for next year. Mm-hmm. So we are going to hold the contractor to that because that's essential to our operation. It is going to be difficult next year just because our crews are going to be based out of the Tar Kiln building and we're going to be getting salt at 878 Tremont Street. So it's going to be a disjointed operation. If it's the option 1 budget that goes through, there will be undoubtedly a decrease in service. We are not going to be able to get the roads cleared at the pace people in this town are accustomed to. As I mentioned, we are down 7 people right now, so we're experiencing it already. The storm we had Sunday night, fortunately, it didn't impact the schools because Monday was a holiday. For example, our shovel crew, they shovel out most of the central buildings, I think the senior center, police station, fire station. Our shovel crew consists of 3 people right now. I stopped by to see them while they were working, and they mentioned there used to be 6 people. So that's a concern for me because we need to prioritize road clearing, so people who could potentially be shoveling have to be clearing roads, and that means we may not be able to get buildings open on time because we just don't have the staff to get everything done.
You brought it up about the Tar Kiln building. and this is, part of this is supposed to be sustainable, does this budget contemplate the repositioning and relocating of your staff over the next couple of years while the DPW?
Yeah, so in that budget, we did add a nominal amount in Tarkiln to increase utilities. And we think that's going to be offset by the utility savings from the central buildings budget that we're not spending on the DPW facility because it will be knocked down. So, but yeah, we didn't really have an exact way to budget that, so.
Yeah. Are you gonna have to store vehicles anywhere else and pay for that or anything of that nature?
Yeah, it is going to be disjointed, the operation. So we're looking, actually, the police department has been nice enough to offer their satellite parking lot. So we're planning to put our big trucks there. We're going to store some equipment at the transfer station. Actually, our staff right now, the way it's planned, will be parking behind the cemetery, and then they will be switching into their daily work trucks and driving to the Tarkiln building to report to work, because we don't want to take up too much parking at Tarkiln because it's heavily used. So it's going to be a struggle, but we will get through it.
Good question, come to the mic, please.
Hi, Betsy. Nice to see you. I want everyone to know that we are, in fact, friends, okay? So I'm sorry for whatever happened last week, so.
It's history.
All right. So my question is, when the DPW building and all of that goes over to Tarkiln, full disclosure, I just came from pickleball, okay?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of activity over at the Tarkiln building,
Right.
the baseball fields and all of that. So I'm just wondering, logistically, obviously you have your works and all of that, and now we're gonna have a lot of kids around, a lot of crazy pickleball ladies.
Yeah, so that's the thing, we've been talking a lot about this internally, how do we manage that, and that's why we're talking about staging equipment and trucks in different locations, so there is parking available. Fortunately, our daily operation doesn't conflict too much with the school children, because our highway department starts at 6:30, they end their day at 3. Jim's department starts their day at 7, they end their day at 3:15. So it coordinates well with that. In terms of the pickleball, not so much, which is why we want to leave as much parking as possible available. During a storm, storms tend to happen at night, so hopefully that's not disruptive, but there will be times when it's disruptive. We would welcome if people have concerns to come and let us know, so we can do our best to accommodate, because we don't want to disrupt the residents. You know, that facility is for the residents to use, so this was a way for the town to save quite a bit of money. We were originally looking at portable office trailers to site the crews, and that was going to be very expensive. So this is a savings, and we're going to have to try to compromise somehow.
So, what's the timeline for the project and moving over to the Tarkiln building? And how long do you
So-
project you'll be there, 2 years?
I think it's probably going to be around 2 years.
2 to 3, okay.
Realistically, we need to be out of where we're at right now by the middle of March. So,
2025,
yes.
okay.
So
And
it's going to
then,
happen pretty soon. We've actually started moving things into the Tarkiln building already.
so, and I know we haven't gotten to the Tarkiln building yet, so there must be some revenue that comes in from rentals and all of that, so this is all being, when you're working on the budget?
It's
If I
very
may.
little.
Yeah, the revenues are de minimis. I think over,
That's a big word, what does that mean?
not a lot.
Okay,
Sorry, they're small.
Okay, so
Maybe-
it's not-
Maybe $1,000 a year,
okay. Great,
2,000, it's really, really small.
okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Highway maintenance.
Actually, that was,
We kind of drifted into a few different ones here. We're
Sorry.
at highway road
That was
maintenance.
line 41 is what we just talked about, actually.
No, well, that was back to Tarkiln, but we've gone through vehicle maintenance, highway and road maintenance. restored 2 FTEs from.
Okay, yeah, so this one's a real heavy hit for us, the option 1 budget. We're talking about losing 2 highway staff, a skilled laborer and an equipment operator. So full staff highway has 9 people, so that's a significant hit. Highway is the department you see day to day on the roads. They're cleaning out catch basins, sweeping the streets, doing drainage improvements, patching potholes. They inspect our annual paving program. This is our core salting crew, too. So right now, because we're short-staffed, we're pulling people from other DPW departments who have the appropriate licenses to run those big trucks. Ideally, that should all be managed within highway, but we just don't have the staff. So again, we're spread thin right now. So the thought of losing those positions permanently is extremely detrimental to the operation. The public will notice it undoubtedly. You know, the roads will not, again, going back to snow and ice, you won't see the attention at the pace you're accustomed to. We have less people on the roads, less gets done. It's that simple. Potholes won't get patched as quickly. Just everything will be slower. We will do our best to maintain existing operations, but if we're out of budget money, we're out of money. So, you know, right now where we do have vacancies, we do have some overtime money, and we have those vacant salary positions. So we have had staff work overtime to make up for some of those necessary items that have to be done. But once you lose those positions, we don't have that option. So the residents will be impacted by that.
Is this the group that also does the paving, so if a street's being repaved?
Yeah, well, we have typically a contractor come in for the big paving, but they will oversee it. They'll prep the roads for paving, inspect it, so they are very much involved. They do some level of patching, but just not an entire road. That's too much for in-house.
Yeah.
So.
We receive money from the state in Chapter 90, I believe.
Yes, yes.
Is that part, what's similar to the animal control, what's the amount of money that we receive from the state? Has that been changing, or
Well, we are anticipating that it's going to change. There was recently an announcement, so I don't know what the amount's going to be, but we get about $530,000 a year in Chapter 90 money. The town historically has primarily used that to pave roads, but Chapter 90 money can also be used for, well, I think the town's used it for bridge repairs. It can be used for sidewalk work, drainage, guardrails. So there's quite a bit you can use it for, but with the amount of money we get, it goes pretty quick. So, and that's something actually coming down the road. I'm going to request to come before the board and present the pavement management plan we just recently completed. And we actually used Chapter 90 money to do this. And basically the pavement management plan, we had a consultant go out, assess all the town's roads, grade them, score them, and give us a whole breakdown on how much money the town needs to invest to bring the roads up to ideal standards. And it's sobering when you see that, but I think everyone wants to get through the budget before I spring that on you.
Thanks for the sneak.
That was very diplomatic. Good job.
Question, well, when you're talking about funding from the state,
Yep.
is anything at risk because of the MBTA decision?
I am not aware of Chapter 90 money being at risk. I have not
Or
heard that.
anything else? You mentioned money, donations for the animal people, for example.
No,
I
that's
know
a different
that's
account, yeah.
Separate, but do you have any other funding that comes in that's from the state, either through grants or from state money that could potentially be at risk?
I haven't heard anything, so, Chapter 90, we receive annually. Another grant fund that we receive annually is the Recycling Dividends Fund. That's in the transfer station. They are changing how they scored that, so I think we're going to get less next year. We get about $16,000 a year on, through that grant to spend on recycling initiatives. But I haven't heard anything, any potential cuts because of the MBTA zoning for that. So I think there may be other grants, but not the annual grants we received, at least not on the DPW.
You've got 27,600 on expenses for highway. Is that the, maybe you can explain that one?
Yeah, so, well, this is a great example of tools in tight budgets. Last year when I came on board, there was chatter one day about highway needed to weed whack some sidewalks before the parade, and we borrow the weed whackers from Lands and Natural Resources. Well, Jim's crew pretty much needs their weed whackers every day, so highway, they couldn't do the work because they weren't available. I said, a weed whacker? I mean, this isn't a big ticket item. You mean to tell me we don't have enough money to buy a weed whacker? So after some prodding, we did go and buy the weed whackers, but this is how tight our budgets have been historically, that our department heads are hesitant to spend money on. To me, a weed whacker is an essential tool in our toolbox. So we looked at the highway budget again. This one every year comes right down to the penny. We're spending money every year on boards for the Powder Point Bridge. Those are expensive. That's a non-stop maintenance. We could probably be out there easily weekly, but we don't have the money to do it. So we increased that item. Just, yeah, supplies, our sign budget. Signs are incredibly expensive. So we deplete that every year, and it seems everybody wants one of those radar speed feedback signs on their street. Well, those are thousands of dollars. And what is our sign budget? I can't remember if it's 10 or...
10,000.
Is it? Yeah, it's 10,000, so I think we had proposed that to go up to 15?
Yes.
Yes. So, yeah, I
Just
mean...
so you know that a Powder Point Bridge board is $1,000 for a 10-foot board.
So Norm just said a Powder Point Bridge board is $1,000 for a 10-foot board. So, very expensive. So again, everything we do in DPW is essential operations. This is necessary for the town. So when we have cuts, you know, this impacts everybody because everybody's driving on the roads. So this is, you know, obviously not something we're thrilled about, the thought of this option one budget, but.
Could I ask you a question, Sheila? You mentioned a study or something, upcoming costs associated with upgrading the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand we don't want to get into that conversation now, but it is very important to me personally to try to inform the public of all expenses that we know of that are coming down the road. I think it's important, you know, for instance, I keep mentioning, you know, we know that the town is faced with PFAS in their water. We know that the price tag of that, if not this year, next year, is going to be the first ask of 38 or 50 or some number that is a lot. And it's important, you know, it's important to me that as the community digests all the different departments and what these budgets are looking like, that they also are aware of the expenses that we know are coming. And there are many, and I think I'm going to try to get them listed, you know, at least what we know on the website so that people are aware of them. For your department, you just mentioned the road study. Is there anything else that you know of that we, in the next few years, are going to be facing and that people need to be aware is coming?
Well, I mean, if you look at what I've put in for the capital planning, what I've tried to propose, because I'm new here, so I don't have the baseline knowledge, but this pavement management plan was one of them. I had actually had that in the capital plan last year, but the pavement management plans are something that MassDOT encourages towns to do through Chapter 90 funds, so I found when it came time to pick roads to pave last year, I was really in a difficult position. I didn't know the roads. I didn't have any guideline. And I didn't know the infrastructure to know, because you don't want to pave a road if you have a drainage problem. So that's what propelled me to move forward on that pavement management plan sooner rather than later. Another similar type plan I had proposed for the FY26 capital plan that didn't make the short list was a bridge and culvert asset management plan. Because again, that was going to inspect all the bridges and culverts in town, give us a count, because no one's been able to tell me how many culverts we have in town. Give us a count, assess them, and give us our short-term, medium-term, and long-term needs. So when I look at the town's infrastructure, I want to have those baseline reports so I know what our needs are, so I can project out. So I'm still trying to assemble that right now, and that's a struggle to get the funding for that. So I've also been thinking maybe Chapter 90 is the route to go for that bridge and culvert asset management plan. But I think that was a $90,000 expense. When you're only getting $530,000, that's a lot of money. But to me, that's an important tool in the toolbox to properly manage the town's infrastructure, because I don't like flying blind. I'm an engineer. I like to plan things out and know what I'm dealing with. So I'm still in discovery phase here. So, but there are always expenses with infrastructure. Infrastructure is dynamic. It's always changing, just like we have this water main break tonight. You're never going to be at 100% perfection. So
I completely understand and can appreciate that. I'm not asking for, unforeseen, because like you said, anything can happen anytime.
Yeah.
What I'm really trying to do is help the residents know what we are seeing, what we can anticipate coming down the pike, just to help with this overall budgeting. Thank you.
All set? Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna, we discussed snow and ice, streetlights, transfer station. So there's been some movement in the transfer station, and I know that you had some comments on that, Jill.
yeah, so this, in our override budget, we had proposed to increase the overtime at the transfer station to align with what we see. There is a significant amount of money spent on overtime at the transfer station, and it has to do with the operating hours of the transfer station, and it also has, and the daily schedule. So we have weekend hours. So when the staff that works there takes time off, we need to if you're taking time off, you probably want to take it on a weekend. So then we need to backfill those positions on weekends, and that's overtime. So something that did appear in the option 1 budget was to reduce the transfer station hours. So the transfer station would be open from 8:30 to 3:30 instead of 8 to 4. What happens right now with the current hours is our existing staff regularly gets overtime due to the 8 to 4 schedule, because if people leave at 4 o'clock, well, there's still cleanup that has to happen on the other end. They often come in early to get ready for the day. So under the option 1 budget, the thought was, all right, let's condense those hours and we can save quite a bit on overtime. That still appears in the override budget, the reduced transfer station hours. So I want to point that out to everybody. I do have a concern with that, because this was another thing I was shocked about when I came to Duxbury, is how many residents use that transfer station. We actually have more people in Duxbury using the transfer station than we did in Plymouth. Okay, so it is well-loved by the residents. So this reduction in hours under both budgets will be impacting the residents. So I just want to point that out. People love the transfer station here, and they will be inconvenienced if the hours go to 8:30 to 3:30.
I have a question on that,
Brian?
and I appreciate your efforts to be creative when it comes to the transfer station. I haven't thought about this, but I'm bringing it up for comment. We're open 5 days. Do we need to be open 5 days? Could we be open 4, for example? Same hours, but cut a day.
Okay, so Rainey actually asked me this question when we were looking at, what do you cut? Well, we don't want to cut anything in DPW, and I certainly don't want to cut live bodies, right? So my concern with that is it is so hard to fill the transfer station positions as it is because of the weekend hours. If we then cut these people's hours by a day, probably none, I don't think any of our existing staff there would stay because they're not getting 40 hours. They're not getting full pay.
Well, couldn't you keep the
So-
people and redeploy them to other?
Well, then, so we still have to pay for them. So what are you gaining?
What are you spending the overtime on?
The overtime?
Yeah,
The routine weekly overtime?
yes.
Norm, do you want to get up and talk about that a little bit since you are more familiar with the operation?
Oh, I can tell you.
Yeah, on the overtime, like Sheila said, most of the time is people taking vacation time. We haul trash twice a week, and that removes a person from the transfer station. So we, if there's a sick call, we have to take a guy out of our department to fill in up there. So there's a lot of different things that happen up there that we really do need the staff. Just hauling the trash, that happens twice a week, like I said, and that leaves 2 people there to run the whole place. And if it's busy, it's a nightmare for those guys.
Well, that's kind of my point, that that it's well-used, right? If you concentrate the inputs over 4 days, does that free up like an extra day? Let's say, I don't know, Mondays or something, when you're usually closed. Is that a day you could haul? It wouldn't be open. I'm not trying to micromanage the department. I'm just trying to throw out ideas as to saving on overtime.
Right.
Without
One of the
affecting-
problems with hauling is that he could leave at 8 in the morning, and when he gets down there, he's in a line for 4 hours before he can even dump his trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different all the time when you go to haul trash.
But part of the daily overtime, like I mentioned, is just the hours, that 8 to 4 window, there's your 8-hour workday. The last person comes through the gate, a little bit before 4. What if it takes them 15 minutes to go through everything? Well, our staff has to wait, and then they need to clean up before they leave. So that's why if you close earlier, it reduces the potential for that overtime at the end of the day. I don't think it would eliminate it totally, but you also have to look at those hours because we're here to service the residents. Closing at 3:30, I don't think helps people on Thursdays and Fridays. And you don't really want to switch the weekend days. I'm sure maybe our staff would like it, but, because weekend's convenient for the residents to go to the transfer station.
Weekends
I can
are absolutely
add to
crazy
that.
down
Oh, no
there.
question.
Yeah.
I'd be in favor of cutting a day before I'd cut hours.
Yeah, I just think you're going to lose staff.
Rainey had a,
I am, and anybody in the DPW will tell you, I am a super user of the transfer station. It's where I spend my lunch, and I'm there at least twice on Saturday and sometimes 3 times on Sunday, much to the chagrin of my darling wife. I know how that place runs in and out. And one of the reasons that we reduced the hours first at the mall over the last few months was because of the problem they were having with cleanup. People were dropping trash. I mean, the caliber of stuff that was going into the mall has degraded to such an extent over the last 10 years. It's remarkable. But nonetheless, To help them clean up and be able to get the mall squared away for the next day, the decision was made to close it at 3:30 instead of 4. Because at 4 o'clock, you still had all the junk, and then they had to come over with the loader, and it takes time to get the loader, bring it over, drop it into the bins. So it made great sense. It was not received well, but it is now the new normal. People understand that. By closing a half hour earlier at 3:30, we reduce not just that problem, but then we reduce the problem of the stragglers coming in, like I have seen it so many times. They're zipping in there at 5 minutes to 4, and they're going to spend 10 or 15 minutes, not just, they're not doing the mall anymore, but it takes time to hit all 3 stations. If you're going to drop off your plastics, your paper, and then your trash, that's not 5 minutes. That is a full 15 minutes, because you got to get in and out of your car, 10 minutes. So people try to get in and out as quickly as they can, but with the traffic on the weekends, forget it. And if the mall isn't open, it will expedite things a little bit more, but then instead you have something else going on, which is the mulching that happens in the springtime when we're allowing people to bring in their brush. That creates a whole new traffic pattern. The holidays, the place is jammed, especially at Thanksgiving and Christmas when you have heavy trash weekends. I've seen it time and time again, and I also am not a fan of closing it for a day. One of the things that's a draw is not just the mall, but also the price. It's cheaper to use the transfer station than it is to have a private hauler come to your house, unless you do more than 5 bags a week. If you hit 6 bags a week, it's cheaper to have a private hauler. I've done the math on this many, many times because I've had people say, oh, the price is too high, and I can prove mathematically that it's cheaper to go there yourself than it is to have a hauler.
Well, that was going to be my question about the price of this. It's a $774,000 expense budget here. It's used by a lot of people, but it's not used by everyone.
Right.
Is what we're charging the folks that use it covering the expenses for what we're
No,
spending on it?
so this is not an enterprise fund, so no. Some towns, the transfer station is an enterprise fund, but not in Duxbury.
What are the numbers on? What's the breakout on that?
I don't have that breakdown, but that has been something we've been trying to work on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's more complicated than you would think to try to, because you have the pay-as-you-throw bags, and also the trash we haul, the volumes aren't necessarily consistent. We see them go up in the spring and the summer. That's something just in terms of future expense, we have a contract with CMAS that expires in a couple years. So the cost to dispose of the trash will continue to go up.
I think that'd be an important thing to look at, because I
Yeah.
think if you're, sitting back and you're like, I'm paying for private service, why am I paying for somebody else's service too?
Mike, how does that differ from if you decide to send your kid to private school and yet you're still paying for the schools? There's so many things that we pay for that are available to us that we don't utilize.
Well, I think that argument can be made. It's a great opportunity to recycle and do things like that, but I see this more like, water too. If you use the town, using water, and you should pay for it. It's somebody else shouldn't pay for your water, and it's, it's just a something worth talking about. Whether it's an enterprise fund or just getting our arms wrapped around the numbers here. Do they make sense? Should we charge more? I think it's.
And yeah, that is something that I've been thinking, maybe we do need to go up on the cost of the bags. Because I think that is probably the most equitable way to do it, because it's based on the volume you throw away. So you pay based on the trash you produce.
There you go.
Okay.
All right.
I'd love to get this poor man with the wet feet home. Mark, want to tell us about tonight's fiasco? And maybe then we can, you just had some additional repairs and maintenance and uniforms that you were looking for in this budget. Sheila, should Mark handle that?
Sure, go for it, Mark.
And then go home.
Oh, he's going back out to Alton Street, unfortunately.
I'm
just starting.
I was being hopeful, sorry.
So, what was the line item that you were questioning?
Just a brief discussion, you've got some, under sewer, you've got the salaries didn't change, but you added 26,500 to repairs, maintenance, and uniforms.
Okay, so the original plan was to have separate uniforms for the staff, so that when they were doing sewer work, they would be able to change out of those uniforms at the sewer plant and change back into their water uniforms, so they weren't mixing the two up.
We don't want that.
No.
No. So, on the sewer, I know that we've had a lot of conversations about the sewers and maintenance needed for the sewers. I know that last year there were some transfers that had to be made to support the maintenance for our sewer system that is not necessarily covered in the water and sewer bill. Too much of a conversation for now, or?
No, I mean, it is an aging system. Everything was new 20 years ago, but as it ages, it needs more maintenance and more work. And we like to do preventive maintenance to avoid mass failures. There's it's a fairly large system that they're all connected to. It's a shared septic system. So if we were to lose one of the lines feeding that shared leach field, it would be a big problem. It just wouldn't be one house, it would be multiple houses, and then there'd also be businesses down at Snug Harbor area.
So does this number give you the ability to work on some of that deferred maintenance that needs to get caught up on?
Well, it'll help with the engineering and the planning, and then we're also asking for capital funds to help us out with when we identify these projects, that we can actually do them.
I have a question.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so Mark, Marshfield Sewer is going up $8,000. What's that for?
Yeah, so we have no control over the cost of Marshfield Sewer. They have a full-size sewer treatment plant that is staffed daily and with lift stations, and it requires an awful lot of maintenance. And we have an agreement with Marshfield that we have to pay a certain portion of that cost of that plant.
So it's a reflection of their cost increase then? Okay.
But there's also maintenance that we can do. It's called I&I, and that helps us to look and make sure that there no seawater is going into the sewer, because all the sewer going to Marshfield is metered. So if we have stormwater or any sort of water getting into the sewer system, we're paying at the sewer rate for that water.
All right. The other question I have was waste removal is also going up by $5,000. What's that for?
So the sewer plant that services the school, the only way that we can get rid of the solid waste that's not broken down that and goes into the leach field is to pump it out by a private hauler, and their costs are going up annually all the time.
Okay, so a reflection on inflation in services being provided.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did we get a generator for that building?
We don't have a generator. We have a portable one that we can hook up. We have a consultant looking now to power up all the lift stations and the sewer plant so that we can stay open when the school's open. So if the school's running on generator, we want to be able to run the sewer system on generator also.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Don't be sorry, and I know I've been asked numerous times to speak louder, but I don't think this is really working. So-
Yeah, no, it is.
Good, you can hear me now.
Bring it a little closer.
My question is similar to what I asked Sheila. Again, in an effort to try to educate the public on what costs are coming down the line. I know in your department, there are some significant ones. We know we are looking at a water rate hike in the very near future. We're looking at PFAS remediation throughout the town, which is going to be a price tag of many millions. And you just mentioned some capital projects. Could you touch on projects that you know are going to be in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long list, and some of it, a lot of the stuff on the sewer side is preventive maintenance. And then on the water side, there's a lot of work and equipment upgrades, and we're continually working on wells, pulling pumps out, redoing them, So it's a lot of work, painting storage tanks. It's a long list.
So without getting, specific, and maybe at some point in the future, we could have fiscal advisory speaking to, what capital projects they have on their radar, I think would be helpful. Thank you.
Could you help me understand the 26,500? Is that sewer for the schools, or is that for a shared, like, I want to call it septic, for those neighborhoods that had a special sewer system?
Shared
which-
septic system. we
Yeah,
like to
I
call
know.
it.
Shared septic or something like that.
Which one was that?
What you're asking for, the
The
26,000.
expense line.
The expense line that increased 26.5, he's asking you to break down what that would cover other than uniforms.
Okay, and what line number is
Oh,
that?
it's just for,
59.
Repairs and maintenance.
The repairs to a shared septic system that was for a neighborhood.
Oh, okay, yeah, so we need to do maintenance on all those SIP systems.
Yeah,
So there's, the pumps cost probably about 40,000 each, and there's
Yeah.
2 pumps in each one.
right.
And then the Bay Road, we also pay for all those pumps. Those about $3,500 a piece when they fail.
What was what was the agreement with those neighborhoods? I know part of it was betterments when they were first put in. Was there any part of that that was shared for maintenance?
No, not that I know of.
So it's just the upfront cost for the actual work?
Yeah.
Is that everybody else's memory? I mean, it's predated. Okay.
It was just a betterment was assigned for the construction of it. There was not an add-on for maintenance, deferred maintenance.
Okay.
Okay. Did somebody else have a question? No, you were just stretching? Just stretching,
So
okay.
just to
All right.
elaborate on that, so are you saying that the folks that are on the shared septics, which are some folks down on Bay Road and Snout
Yep.
Harbor gets pumped to the schools, they don't get any additional fee other than
The way it was
water
set
and
up is-
sewer fee, they just pay
No, they
their-
pay a sewer fee.
They do pay a sewer fee. So if they're paying a sewer fee, is there not an ability to include some type of a maintenance, since that is they're the ones benefiting from that? It would seem to me that,
We have been told that that is not possible under the current agreement with those homeowners. Friend?
Yeah, in addition, these shared systems were constructed, it was to protect the town environment.
understood?
We were protecting our own water supply, we were allowing these properties that were near the waterfront, so they wouldn't be dumping, sewer wasn't dumping into our harbor. So there was a benefit to the community. So at the time, the deal that we struck, and I remember it well, was that they shared the concern. That was controversial enough, I might add. But it was approved on that basis. But going forward, they pay a sewer rate, but they do not pay anything for maintenance. That was going to be the town's burden going forward. It was understood the town. But again, the town was getting a benefit. At the time, that's what we thought.
I understand that. I kind of remember the conversation a little bit differently at the time, and I'm just saying, as a homeowner myself, you pay to have your septic system pumped, you pay to have the repairs done, you pay to have it put in. So it doesn't seem to me that,
It's kind of like the water bill. You pay for the water, but you're not paying for the pipes. And that was, I'm not saying I'm in love with this idea, but that is the agreement that was struck 30-odd years ago, so, anyway.
Maybe that's something we can discuss as water and sewer commissioners, Amy. Okay?
We didn't enter that meeting, right?
No, I do not.
Nope. So, but anyway, that's maybe open forum.
Yes, cemetery, Chipster. Cheryl, unless you wanted to take this.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Stay warm.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so
Stay safe is what I'd like to tell them.
we have on here for summer help. So up until COVID, the cemetery used to get 1 to 2 summer help a summer to help the 3 full-time grounds crew that maintains the 4 cemeteries in town. They would help out with fence repair, fence maintenance. As you know, every single headstone in all the cemeteries has to be weed whacked around. there's mowing, there's funerals. So they helped us out with all of that, and it was a big help when someone went on vacation, because then if someone goes on vacation, then I'm down to 2 staff to be able to handle everything. So we're just asking for that to be restored from the pre-COVID time.
Not a new position, just a restoration of what had been
Yes.
there before. Okay.
And then the second was the 22,000 for, it says utilities, retort repairs, cremation supplies. It was more for if a retort repair came up that came out of the blue. I'm having them all inspected right now to make sure they're in good shape. We're probably looking at 3 or 4 years. They're all gonna have to be all refurbished like we did I think we started in 2019. But this money will be, I mean, if I lose a computer, that's like $16,000 just for a retort computer. So that's what that money was for. Doesn't necessarily definitely mean I would use it, but if something happened, it would be there to repair it.
We've had many conversations about departments and some that have consistent revenue streams, and Chip's department is a good source of revenue to the town. So when he needs more money, it's usually offset by more revenue.
Question, the equipment that's in there, the retorts, computers, all that, is anything still under warranty?
No, that building actually opened up in 2012. So there's nothing none of it's under warranty.
Right, well, even though the retort work that was done more recently, there's no...
No, well, it was a year, so, and we started in
Okay.
2019, so that's used up.
Okay, and I know you're looking at your fees on a
I'm
regular
always-
basis.
I'm always looking at my fees.
Yeah, 'cause knowing that this is a regional service that we're providing
Yes,
to South Shore,
it's
not just Duxbury.
It's very, you're walking on a tightrope because I
understand.
have competition.
Yeah, we had a conversation about that.
Yeah, I'm aware.
I look at all my fees, my funeral fees, my interment fees, all of them, foundation fees. I keep an eye on what everyone else is charging, and we try to stay around there.
Thank you.
Brian asked some important questions at that meeting when we talked about the fees, and we decided to set the rates at what they were. I don't know, that was probably 6 months to a year ago.
It was last year.
Yeah. Was that the right, has it worked out since then?
It did, because there's a funeral home, I won't name them, that comes to us, not Plymouth now, and they're in Plymouth because of Plymouth fees.
Great.
So we get an extra, at least 20 a month more,
Yeah,
so.
great.
Chip, thank you.
Yeah.
We can't get done unless we make a joke,
Thanks,
right?
Ted.
We can't seem to get through his department unless we have a little dark humor. So that's good. Okay, Sheila, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for this, oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, please.
I'm Susan Curtis at the Animal Shelter. I just wanted to clarify a few things. So the donation account, there's no other town around, I don't believe, in Massachusetts that does this. So we can't ask, or we never wanted to ask the townspeople to pay for spay neuter, which we're required to do by law. So that comes out of the donation account. Any veterinary expenses comes out of the donation account. Any food comes out of the donation account. So anything, any expense that is involved with the animals, we're never going to ask the townspeople to pay for that. We will take care of that. And I think every year we get about it's either $6,000 or $7,500 from this Copeland Fund. And we've been getting that right along. And so when we got the shelter built, and as you probably know, there's people here that know that story, there was funds raised. The town gave us $75,000 to build a $435,000 building. And so a bunch of people got together, John and I were not involved, and they raised a bunch of money, and we had about $185,000. And so we got the shelter built for less than that. We gave the town back $28,000 from the $75,000 they had given us. And then there was some money left over, and we did a postmortem, and everybody in the room agreed, town manager, everybody agreed that that money was never to be touched for anything other than the care of the animals. And that the amount of money that we have in our budget is for heat, electricity, water, period. And then there's Eddie's salary and then what I get paid. So what we do at the shelter costs the town nothing. And we even put in a generator because we had a summer storm and we had animals there. It's too hot to keep them in a building that's, cement out back. So we paid for that. We paid for the epoxy floors. We paid for all kinds of things. So I just want everybody to understand, touch the donation account, okay? So
We have been threatened.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks. All right, then. No. All right, not me. All right, that's it for DPW. Thank you so much for coming in. We've had you, you've had to go to Capital, you've had to come to Finance, you're back here. I'm sure you're enjoying every minute of it, but thank you so much for coming and answering these questions. It's really helpful.
Well, the alternate tonight would be to be on Alden Street in the freezing cold, so.
I was not mentioning that. We have, unless there's a question about DPW, that I'm going to let these folks go home. Okay. We've got a little time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. Chip, did you forget a cup, or is that your cup there in the bed? There is, oh no, I'm sorry. Okay. There you go. We've got a little time, and we're, if it's all right with the team, Rainey's going to take a couple of items from general government so that we can get those taken care of, so we keep moving along in our schedule. Yep.
Sure.
Rainey?
The first is line 1, under town meeting expenses. You'll see an increase, a proposed increase of $300 to cover the cost of the increased cost of printing of the town meeting materials, which is basically the annual report and any other documents that we need to generate for that. On line 3, we really need to change that line. Selectman manager, it should say select board, but anyways, salaries, you'll see a proposal for $51,227, which is the restoration of the one FTE who would be laid off as a result of the override not passing. That's the administrative assistant to the select board. And then on line 4, expenses, is an increase of $50,000 for professional services for mid-year projects. Very often our office has found over the course of the last, at least 10 or 11 years, that there's a need to hire specialists for different things. Take, for example, we once in a while have a need to have engineers come in and help us with doing analysis on culvert work. As recently as last summer, we had issues with the wastewater treatment facility, and we were scrambling around to figure out where to get the funds to hire an engineer to come in and help Mark with that project. Otherwise, we have to hit the reserve fund for that. You had mentioned Wadsworth Field earlier. There was a situation last summer where we thought we had a breakout up there. Our own staff was able to work through it, but in some cases, it's helpful to have a place where we can go to find money to fund those one-off engineering projects that do require some help. Like I said, the culvert work one comes to mind also because 3 or 4 years ago, we were trying to do some work down on Harrison Street that we had to close the road just to be able to provide not just the engineering aspect of it, but any permitting that's necessary to go with a project like that. It doesn't happen all the time, but it's a good insurance policy, if you will, to be able to cover those costs should they arise. Again, the objective here with the contingency budget is to be sustainable. And part of that sustainability is to build in enough room to be able to have the room to move and be able to pivot in future years. So that's what the design is here with that. With regard to legal expenses, line 15, there's an increase of $5,750, and that's just based on an increase of town council fees and expenses. Yes.
Could you do the planning board, since we don't have a planner to speak to that?
Yeah, let me take a quick look.
That is
What line is that?
line 26.
Betsy, before you move on to that one, I have a question on legal.
I am so
Go ahead.
sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. Rainey, in terms of how legal is allocated
Yeah.
Most communities have some sort of mother may I process.
Yep.
So folks aren't just reaching out to council and running the meter. How's that work here?
Quite well. And to explain for those who don't know, direct access to council is not something that is given loosely. If department heads, for instance, have a question for council, they run it through me, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, so I can track the bill, so I know what the billable hours are, and two, to make sure that the question might not have been answered before. My general policy on it is to try and give them as much access to council as they need. As you know, the board has unlimited access. You guys are always very good about it, though. There's never been an occasion where you haven't said, hey, I need to call the attorney, go for it. In that case, it's just so I can, again, double check the bill and make sure the question hasn't been answered already. So we keep a tight control on it to make sure that the expenses don't go over. I will say that the rate is going up with our council now, our general counsel, KP Law. I just got a letter this week that they're going to go up by, I think, $10 an hour.
Okay, thank you.
To follow up on.
Excuse me one second, I wanted to mention one thing. Excuse me, Amy. Labor Council is a flat fee retainer, so they're not going up. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just following up, how often do we look at our attorneys and consider other firms, look at competitive bids, kind of open it up?
We changed counsel, when I first got here, we had Anderson Krieger. We changed counsel after the bills kept coming in a lot higher than I thought, and I had kind of sent a note out to my counterparts elsewhere to see who they were using for counsel and what they were paying, and it seemed that we were paying an awful lot more, and in fact we were. KP Law represents at least 150 of the communities around us, across the state. Maybe it's closer to 200, but we do look at it once in a while. What we always try to measure is what's the response time, how they service us. Are they available? Are they accessible? And what's the caliber of opinion? Are they steering us in the right direction? And those are sort of the three benchmarks we use, and they've all been favorable so far. I have nothing against Anderson Krieger. In fact, I like those folks a lot. But we were just seeing that the costs were going way higher than we could afford.
Thank you. I think it's something that we as a board should probably discuss. I think there should be a review.
Sure.
Something, so that the public knows that we are constantly looking at this,
Yep.
considering other options if we want to, that kind of thing. I just think it's a good process.
I agree.
As an unsolicited opinion, that I was around through some of these changes, the big plus with this group is the areas of expertise that they have on staff, whereas some of the smaller firms were more limited in that. And this particular organization, you can ask them for an opinion on some of the more obscure aspects of the law and cases, and they seem to have people that are experts in that, which was a real plus when we were looking at changing to them.
And I will say the depth of their bench is pretty extraordinary. I've had weeks where I've had to talk to contract attorneys, I've had to talk to maritime lawyers. They're all there. Everybody you need seems to be under one roof.
And I'm not related to any of them.
No, me neither.
I'm
Me
just
neither.
making sure that we
Yeah.
are mindful of the residents' tax dollars and making sure that we
Yep.
do our due diligence.
Yep. I
Absolutely.
agree.
Your budget, how sustainable is the U+2, you and the two admins going forward over the next few years? I know you had initially proposed an assistant to yourself.
Yeah, I had. I knew it would take a lot of light and heat if I did that, and so I withdrew from it because I'm already getting beat up too much, and I wasn't going to go. I just will not fight that fight. Like it or not, that's the reality, but I won't fight it. I will tell you it is necessary. Why was I 15 minutes late? Because I was running the copies.
I know.
It does come down to that, and it's not an issue of pride. When I started this career 30 years ago, I ran copies. I still do. It's not a big deal. I don't mind that. I always lend a hand. I think it's essential. I think I could make a case on a multitude of levels One, span of control. The optimum span of control is to have between 7 and 9 direct reports. I have 21. Succession planning, I have no intention of going anywhere, and hopefully that's the way it is, but I can give you 2 examples. One, 2 years ago when I had back surgery, I was out for 2 months, and the finance director was appointed the acting town manager. John was a good guy, and it was successful, but I can tell you by the beginning of the 2nd month, he said, "When are you coming back?" He was anxious to get me back here. More recently...
That was my fault.
Huh?
That was my fault.
No, it worked out. Hey, we're here, right? It all worked out. More recently, I had to be out of state for over the holidays. I had a death in the family. It's hard to be 2 places at once. Nancy is an incredible asset to our office, and she does a tremendous job. She's not the assistant town manager, and she knows that, and she could do that. And I'm not saying she would be the heir apparent, but she does a lot of the functions that I do. She handles the insurance for the town exclusively. That's something that could either stay with her, or I could assign different projects to an assistant town manager. So succession planning is a concern. Span of control is another. It's tough. It's tough. But I do it. I'm not venting, by the way. I do it without complaint, and I'm used to doing it. I'm just used to doing a lot of different things at once. It is a challenge.
Yeah.
The other thing to consider, the board expanded from 3 to 5. That was a 66% increase. It's a good idea. It's worked out well. But that did not expand the staff to go with it, and that's a problem. And it isn't a problem just today, but it will be in the future. And not just for me, but it will be for the board as well. Because you all have different things you want to get done, and I want to see them all get done too. But there's only so many of us to go around.
And I also have observed in the 4 years here that when you have turnover in your department heads, you become that department head.
Particularly if there's a vacancy for any length of time. Yeah, that's just kind of how you have to do it.
And this is more commentary, but I just, I asked the question because, as Amy's asked, we want to know what to expect going forward.
Yeah.
And be practical with you and with our community's demands of you, because you also take any meeting that people ask for, and try to put out a lot of fires during the day. We see that. Maybe the public doesn't always see that. So
I deeply appreciate that, Mike. Thank you. And I know the board is of the same opinion. I will tell you, though, given the choice between adding a position called an assistant town manager or restoring staff, I'm going to restore staff first.
I appreciate
no matter
that.
what.
But,
So.
The planning,
Yeah, so.
if you could?
Yep, you bet. Line 26.
Can I ask one question about legal?
Please.
Of course.
I'm just curious, like on the legal end, how many lawsuits the town's involved with right now? And is that what some of the legal costs are going towards? I know you probably can't speak to them,
We
many?
actually have a case tracker, and I didn't bring it with me, and I apologize. The number of lawsuits we're engaged in, I think, is under 10, but I can't remember. Do any of the board members remember the number?
No, it's mostly appeals, administrative appeals of boards, planning,
Yeah.
not planning, but zoning board, conservation, I think, has one.
Yeah.
Board of Health.
I'm
You
thinking.
can't prevent people from suing you, unfortunately.
No, we wish we could. So I was just curious, the land one where the cranberry bog is over on Route 53. That one, so that seems to have been going on for quite a while. Are we almost done? Are we
Some of them
coming
are
to a
more
closure?
protracted than others. I've got 3 attorneys sitting here on my board that can tell you why
Yeah.
that may be, without getting into the specific cases, but there's all kinds of different avenues that get pursued in a lawsuit.
I think that one has been held up by the land courts in Plymouth. They're really, really, really slow.
yeah, and I think to all your question, just generally, we've had an update meeting on all the lawsuits that are pending. Maybe we can put something that we can make available to the public without discussing anything that would,
Yeah.
just listing and just be more transparent about
Great.
it.
Yeah, the board does at least one update on legal cases a year, if not 2, but sometimes more frequently than that, depending on how much activity is surrounding a certain case.
Thank you.
But you had asked another question, and I forget what it was.
No?
I thought there
Are you
was
going to miss me next week when I can't be here?
We'll call you.
Thank you.
Okay, back to,
Planning?
yeah, the planning department. So, for a couple of years, there has been discussion about the idea of hiring somebody called a position that could be called a coastal resiliency planning position. In looking at it and discussing it with the Coastal Resiliency Task Force and a number of others, it seemed that the best approach, the one that I think might work here in Duxbury, would be that of an assistant planning director / environmental planner who would handle things such as coastal resiliency planning. In speaking with Paul Halkiotis, who was our previous interim planner, he wasn't sure that the need was there for a specific position for a coastal resiliency planner on a full-time basis, but maybe a part-time. And I thought the better idea would be to have this person sort of do both. Be the assistant planning director, again, for succession planning, span of control issues, and things like that. Allow, have somebody with the power of the pen to be able to be the planner in the absence of a planning director. It just seemed to make sense, and I think it would work. We've got a good job description to go with it. And so there it is. And the other part of that is the mileage allowance for that new position. So the salary would be in the roughly the $92,000, $93,000 range.
Rennie,
Again,
Part of the long-range sustainability aspect. Yes, please, Fernando.
Rennie, one of the needs is being able to, one of the asks has been a grant writer. Would
Yep.
this be a role that the assistant?
Yes, it would.
Assistant planning director, environmental planner would also be able to go out there and write grants other than the ones that the various departments are writing
Yeah, but it's not a
themselves?
grant writer position, and
Correct.
it's important to make that distinction, but it is somebody who would that we would ask. that they have
In
the
their
ability to
roles
write
and
grants.
responsibilities
Yes.
would be to write
identify
grants.
them.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Also, we desperately need to update our zoning bylaws, our town bylaws as well. I just noticed that we're still, our bylaw right now still reflects a three-member select board, so there's a bit of work needs to be done. Is that something that you would see within the roles and responsibilities of that planning director and assistant to review our zoning bylaws and general bylaws to ensure compliance?
If it relates to the planning and zoning aspects, yes, the general bylaws come under our roof.
Okay, so that's something the select
Our-
board should be doing.
Pardon?
Something the select board should be accountable for doing, all right.
I'll add that to my list, Fernando.
Yeah, thank you.
We don't stand with a planning director.
Pardon? Oh, we have an interim right now. We just got through we're just in the process of wrapping up the compensation classification study. I believe Jeannie is going to be presenting that to the board, I want to say in the next 2 or 3 meetings. I'm not sure which one, you'll have to forgive me. And then once that happens, we can roll forward. We're constantly looking. We have an excellent person working for us now. Her name's Rebecca Ruffley. She's got experience all over the place, and she's doing a terrific job, but it'd be nice to have somebody in a more full-time capacity, of course.
So this salary line obviously reflects a full-time
Yes, it does.
head planner and,
No, I'm sorry, if you're looking at the one in blue?
no, I'm looking at the total.
Overall budget.
Oh, yes,
The
yes,
overall
yes,
budget,
yes.
yes.
That includes the planning director, the assistant town planner, and the administrative support staff. You're looking at the column on the far right under 248?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
And just a point of clarification, the select board is in charge of the general bylaws, but the zoning bylaws of the town are under the auspice of the elected planning board.
Absolutely.
So this is a line that I have some concern with. I wouldn't say concern, but I just, an opinion. And we haven't had, I don't know, we've had a lot of temporary planners and people, we haven't had anybody on for a lengthy period of time since Val. And then Val was,
Chris Ryan.
yeah,
Chris Ryan.
but what did, he was a year?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was our last full-time.
So, my view is that the focus should be on hiring a planner and finding out if that planner needs an assistant planner. And I go back to the point I was making about you and how stretched you are, I actually see a bigger need if there was an assistant for you as opposed to an assistant planner. We haven't had a planner really in some time and I have some concerns about hiring an assistant planner when we haven't even been able to hire a planner. We don't know what that person's needs are, what their capabilities are, and the idea about all these, I mean, it was supposed to be if we had a full-time planner on for more than we just last did, that we would get those bylaws done. And that if we had a grant writer, it would be for all the departments, not just for the planning department. I just think that resources could be better spent if it was more central to you as opposed to the planner.
But I think, Mike, I think, if I'm understanding this, the original intention here is to try to fill a need that we have for coastal resiliency issues. And in looking at that need, it was then determined that perhaps labeling it an assistant planner was more practical. I still believe that there is a need for somebody focused on the coastal resiliency and everything that is involved in that, because that problem is not getting any better.
No, it's getting much worse. I remember when Chris Ryan was here and we were first working with him on the Coastal Resiliency Task Force, and he was doing his hardest work in order to support us and the things that we needed and try to outline different grants and whatever. But there was just no way. I mean, be able to do that and to do the regular planning work. There was not the time for him to be able to do that. And we have, as Damien said, we have such needs with the, the beach and our roads, our, bridges, the snug harbor. I mean, it just goes on and on what the needs are as far as sea level rise and that sort of thing.
Just from my perspective, we don't know what we don't know. We don't have a planner on. We have an excellent interim planner, but until a full-time planner gets on, I just don't know what the needs of that person are. We've got plenty of reports and studies and things like that. It may be that a planner needs somebody to help execute some of those studies that we've been sitting on for a number of years. But I just don't know, and to put that in a budget now, when we still don't, we have not hired a full-time permanent planner, just seems a little bit.
Well, I think, but I do know, having worked at the Coastal Resiliency Group and with the planner who is just was the full-time planner, is that there is that need. The coastal resiliency issues, the sea level rise issues in this town are just going to get worse. Duxbury is one of the very few towns along the entire seacoast that does not have somebody in this position.
If I can just throw my 2 cents in here as well. A few of us here spent some time on the planning board.
Yes.
And I think what we saw is even if we have a very capable planning director, that person gets burned out because there's just way too much work that's done, and rightly so. We have a lot of needs in this community on the planning end. Folks watching at home wouldn't necessarily understand that just looking at town hall. Why, you're not building subdivisions every week. Why do you need a planning director? And some of the reasons were discussed tonight with the zoning bylaw, implementation of the comprehensive plan. I'm looking at Rainey on that one because that's a must-have, but it's primarily driven through planning. And a lot of the work that many of the volunteers in town and volunteer boards are trying to get done hinge on having a fully functioning planning department. And I'm with you that if we only had X dollars and we could only choose an assistant town planner versus an assistant town manager, I would vote for the assistant town manager, because I think that's the more immediate need. But for this to be a sustainable budget, even if we can't get a environmental planner on board right away, and to your point, it needs to be a hire that the planning director makes to make sure that that works out. I think it's good to have this in the budget so that we can bring that person on board when the time is right. And I just want to add, Rainey, not to put you on the spot, but one thing that you're hearing some frustration from all of us is the need for a planner, and I realize that you and HR are working very hard on trying to get a full-time person. We're also talking about getting an assistant town manager at some point. Are there any communities that have like hybrid roles where somebody can serve as an assistant town manager, for example, and a department head, like a planner, like economic development or something like that? I'm trying to think of ways where, we've had the help wanted sign up for a long time. It's dusty. We're working on the personnel plan to get it to pay more in connection with competitive towns. But this is still, we all know how special this town is, but it requires a certain caliber of planner who can do the coastal, who can do really all the things that make Duxbury great. It hinges upon a well-versed planning director. And if a way to do that, and I don't know if this has been talked about at all, I'm not suggesting we do this, but I'm just raising the idea, is there like a hybrid role, assistant town manager / planning director? Would that attract more bees to the honey, or is there too much work in one and you couldn't do both jobs well?
In Duxbury's uniqueness, it would be problematic, and I'll tell you why. That person would have to serve 2 elected boards.
Well, no, I thought we changed the structure a couple of years ago.
No, the planning board's still elected.
No, I know they're
report to
elected,
you.
but the planner reports to you instead of the planning board.
Yeah.
But they're still under the direction.
Direction.
By the way, I'm not saying no, but what I will say is, through my own experience, I've seen assistant town managers who provide administrative oversight to a group of departments, sort of the building department, Board of Health, Conservation, Engineering, Planning, but not on a day-to-day basis. Not
Okay.
like, let's put the agenda together and send the packets out. More like, hey, what's going on in your department? That kind of thing.
Okay.
Not delving as deeply as I think you're indicating. And I know what you're saying, but that would be a heck of a job. A lot of meetings.
Sure, yeah.
Well, you've
Hey,
had that,
can
you
I just,
basically had that job.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to, Mike, just want to let you know where I stand, and I'm fully supportive of the comments. I won't repeat them, but the comments that Amy have made, Cindy have made, and Brian have made with regards to the need of assistant planning director, environmental engineer, coastal resiliency, whatever you want to call that person, but the scope and scale of that job requires two people in that role. I feel strongly about that, and I support the comments of my other select board members.
And if I could just, again, it's incredibly important to me that we are as transparent as we possibly can. And I am looking at what I believe is a 5-year sustainable budget forecast that's being put in front of me. And it does not include the position of assistant town manager, yet I'm hearing that discussion tonight. I do not want to be misleading the residents that that is a consideration that is actually in front of us, or that we are going to be hitting them with next year, because that is not my understanding. So I would just,
I didn't propose it.
okay.
Yeah,
So
I agree. It's not on it's
okay. 'Cause
not for the future.
Again, it's, okay, I will say
Okay.
no more, thank you.
Let's not confuse, let's stick to the budget tonight, at the override budget, and the 5-year forecast that we put together.
I do think, though, that one of the pluses of the assistant planner is I am hopeful that that will allow us to work more with the county and use some of the facilities and monies and programs that they have, because it's foolhardy to think that the problem begins and ends at our borders. It is a problem along the coast, and the county, I think, needs to be brought in to support all of the towns that are in Plymouth County along the coast, and we do not have the bandwidth now to advocate for those funds, and hopefully this will be an opportunity to maximize that relationship and get some funds from them and support. And that would be huge.
You raise a
Also,
good point, Betsy.
The notion of having an assistant planner is an attraction for a planner.
And affordable housing.
They're not a one-man band.
Well, help me understand this, because are there any other towns up and down the coast or in Plymouth County that have this position, and what do they do? What do they do for the every week of the year? I understand it's a massive issue.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people working on it. There's consultants making a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
But what does a full-time assistant planner that's primarily devoted towards coastal resiliency do?
Well, in this case, it's not geared primarily toward coastal resiliency. That's a part of the position, because the other parts would be the grant writing, seeking that aspect, providing additional staff support to the planning board itself, freeing up time for the planner to be able to do the things like making sure that the town plan is implemented, addressing the zoning bylaw changes. I mean, the poor zoning bylaw changes, those have been stagnant for a long time, but if the planner has the ability to be able to sit down and spend the amount of time necessary to work on a zoning bylaw, that is something that can actually get done. But it can't get done when he or she has to sit through a meeting and review a site plan, or review a subdivision, or any number of other administrative, ministerial things that could be delegated to a subordinate.
Okay.
They kind of deal with the heady theoretical stuff, is the best way to put it. And the other person can do the day-to-day.
We've had a lot of conversation about affordable housing through Envision Duxbury, the group here at the Council on Aging, when they're working at the tragically named Age and Friendly Dementia Committee.
Task force, yeah.
Yeah, task force.
They're changing it to livable Duxbury.
Yeah, okay. Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. There's enough work for anybody. Not that I'm indicating by that I have an opinion that an assistant town manager wouldn't be filling their days quite adequately. So, we're a living organism. We'll change over time.
I think that wraps up what we can cover tonight.
I think
you
it
guys
is,
do
and thank you so
animal
much for
control?
jumping in with
Yeah.
absolutely no warning whatsoever. Thank
No
you, sir.
problem. Did you guys do animal control already?
Yes.
We
Okay,
did. Yep, we did it all. We check, double check.
How about reserve fund?
Will
No,
we
we
be,
didn't, but we're going to do that. That's on the list that Mary
Okay,
has all
cool.
set up.
I want to talk about the upcoming meetings.
Yep,
Are we
we-
meeting next Tuesday?
Amy has a
Yes.
question, sorry.
Will we be having a presentation from Capital, from fiscal advisory?
I suspect. Mary's not here. I'm sure you will.
But I'm not in charge of that.
Okay.
I
didn't
can
know if
talk
it was
to
gonna be
Alex, but-
Part of this forum, since this whole exercise is to help.
They have voted their budget line items. We were going to have them come in and talk to Finance Committee just as part of our regular work, because it's not the override budget. Capital is not the override budget. Capital is Article 7.
No, understood. This was, I had asked
6, or
Rainey
whatever it
at a meeting, at a select board meeting, to ask Alex to come in from fiscal advisory so that we know what is on their forecast, what is on their
Oh, I see where you're
forecast of
coming from.
things coming up. Again, it's important for residents to know what is coming down the pike. And I also would just briefly like to comment on, I think what we're doing and, diving into each department and each line item is, again, helping to understand, educate the public, and see, if there's any other places for savings, there's seems to be some commenting out there that, this is a an all or nothing, or, you know, it's pitting department against department. That is, for me, that is so unfair and should be the way that we're looking at this. When you have a household budget, and you know, you're looking at expenses that exceed what you're bringing home, and maybe some of your kids have more costs at any given time, or you're a household expense, you have to prioritize. You have to look, you know, you don't have endless funds. You have to look at what is the most important, and you have to prioritize accordingly. And so I think that is kind of part of what this whole exercise is about. We can only look at, for me, I'm really focused on the government side, what we're focused on. The schools, that's for the school committee and for the schools to support, because again, that's not, I don't have a horse in that race. I mean, it's all, so it's even though it is an override in an overarching label, town residents get to vote at town meeting on every single line item in this budget. So that is why I think we're painstakingly trying to go through this and help everybody, you know, understand what these costs are about, and then they can make the decisions accordingly.
And Fernando did a great job the other night at the library with and Cindy, sorry, Cindy.
No, I was at the very end.
Well, but you there, you showed up, which was great. And so did Sean, and so did Rainey. Oh my God, everybody came to the birthday party. Anyway, so but it was a good presentation. We've got some other folks that have requested the same. We're going to be having a presentation here on the override budget on the 29th at the Senior Center, and there's some other people that have expressed interest. I think that was the Democratic Committee. I think the Republican Committee has reached out, and you know, certainly anybody else that would like to have a Q&A or have a conversation. I think everybody that's involved here is certainly very open to doing that, just so to bring understanding, not campaigning, understanding of what we're talking about. So, you know, but thank you for kicking that off, Fernando and team. It worked out really well, I think. And the website is up. There is a PowerPoint there. There's a lot of, there you go, hold it up, Anna. And there's also a lot of supporting data that is on that page from both the town and from the schools to bring back to see other presentations and other things that they have done. So, and I know somebody at town meeting will say, I didn't know, or it wasn't, but I think that we're really trying to do everything that we can to fully vet this for the public.
Right.
And I feel as though we're doing okay on that. So we'll continue to strive to do better. But thank you all. I know you guys like meeting twice a week. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Sue.
Just, Amy, I really appreciated that question, because we're all going to get to town meeting, and just understanding the process. Obviously, I've gone to lots of town meetings, and I'm not shy, I'll say hold. So are we going to do hold through every single line item like we do every year? I mean, I guess the question is, I might like A and B, but not C.
I'm going to give you something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Look what we have here.
I brought a
Hot
gift.
off, Mr. Press.
I'm giving you copies of the warrant. Can you share them with the folks out there, please? Thank you.
Yes.
I just passed it out to everybody. Did everybody get one? They're coming around the horn, I think.
Maybe a good idea to go through the process for 5A and 5B.
Yeah, I'm going to answer your questions right now, Sue. So,
Thank you.
Yep. First, I want to let you know, this is a draft, okay? It's not final. It says draft on the bottom.
Draft.
So, a couple of things that need to still happen. With respect to Article 5A, which you will find in your hymnal, beginning on page 16.
I want to save one for JR.
Here, right here. Here, that's it.
We have some. Great. Thank you.
By the way, I just emailed this to all the board members in the Finance Committee. You've all got it. So,
okay.
This will be the normal procedure that we follow, where Betsy gets to read, what is it, 99 lines, and she reads the far right column, which is the Finance Committee recommendation. Beginning on page 16, all of those numbers have already been, voted by the Finance Committee for recommendation. And I want to draw your attention to page
44?
No, I want to draw your attention to page 22. And the reason I'm stopping you there is because you'll see some lines that are through some words and numbers here. This is the part I still have to further refine with Mary. I just need to double check. I think these are moved elsewhere, so I just need to double check it with her. I haven't finished these lines. This is as far as I could get before I got here tonight. So I got to double check those. Like, for instance, I think the rock is coming out of this as where it
Because
stands.
it's an enterprise.
Exactly. So those were leftovers from the previous version. So don't worry about that. You'll see the lines. It'll be perfected in the next version. So that's how it works. And then, yes.
It's not that we don't know the numbers, it's that enterprise funds are separate from the budget.
Right. And to Fran's point, Article 5B, the contingency budget, that's the override budget. Now, we don't review all of the lines again. We review only the lines that are affected. And you can see that you'll see missing numbers. It goes from 1 to 3 to 4 to 8 to 9 to 11 to 12, because those comprise the override. The sum total of those, plus the $1 million for levy capacity, that's how you get your $5.8 million override. In fact, that is expressed in the actual language of the article at the top. To see if the town will vote to appropriate $5.8 million override, so-called pursuant to Mass General Law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay?
So let me try to help. When we go through this at town meeting, we're going to go through 5A first.
Yes.
Like
That's where you do
like
your
regular.
typical holds.
If someone has an issue, then they can put a hold on that particular line item. When we get to 5B, we're going to go through that. It's just the line items, the increases.
Yeah.
And if you have a problem with, or an issue with anything on, as we go through, you can put a hold on that.
That's my understanding. That's my understanding, but I'm double checking that with council next week.
I think that would have to be the way that it works.
You'd be surprised because of the way the override language is. It's very specific in what you can and can't do, but I think that is the concept. I know that's the desire, but that's what I got to double check with Jeff. Just to be, I don't want to say yes, absolutely, Amy, you're right, without double checking with council, because I need to make sure that the mechanical process is correct.
I don't know if it's doable, but looking at the contingency funds, it doesn't explain, like in the spreadsheets we've been working, what exactly that is.
No, you're right, Ted. In fact, that's boiled into a presentation beforehand.
But it may be helpful to have that. I mean, it's very little, a small amount of language that is on those spreadsheets that we're looking at. And if that
yeah.
helps to remind people what
That'll be
those-
available as a handout. Sorry, that's not part of the warrant. That's a separate
Matt, we're
handout.
not ignoring you, I know you have a question.
We don't typically, we don't typically put that in the warrant. That's
No,
just a
I
separate
know,
handout.
it's just.
And they can
But
refer to
I
it, you
hear
know.
what Ted's saying.
So
Yeah.
that'll be available outside.
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah, right next to
I'm sure we'll have
these.
tables.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
dancing girls and
Yeah.
pom-poms.
And then the
all
article,
sorts
the
of-
actual ballot question you can find on page, it's in two places. First on page 6, question 1, there it is, as prescribed by statute. And then I believe it occurs in the back, better, 'cause that's where I put it, on page 47 as well.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to vote on the ballot question before we vote on the override budget?
No, that
the
doesn't.
ballot's 2 weeks later.
Yeah, question 1 doesn't get voted on by town meeting.
That just
It's just information.
announces to the public what the ballot is going to look like.
Yeah, what's going to be on it. One other thing I want to show you, and it's not secretive, but on page 42, if you could jump there, I
Not
just want
after
to,
tonight, it wouldn't be.
well, I just want to show you something. Page 42, you'll see an article there for a CPC land purchase. It's not been finalized yet, so the language has been blocked out. This is the placeholder. The language is there, it's just behind the box. I just need to know when they can talk about it publicly. That day is coming, but I didn't want to have to delete the language, so I just put a box over it.
Cool.
Okay?
Matt, you had something you needed to share with the
Sorry,
class?
I'll be quick, so we'll go home. Matt Gambino, Mayflower Street. A couple things. I just want to thank the Select Board for all of the great questions that I've been hearing over the last few weeks. It's a lot of detail to go through, and some of those questions are uncomfortable, and I appreciate you asking them because I think they need to be asked. The only thing I wanted to say was I hope that you do have, I don't know if I misheard you, Amy, but I hope you do have a horse in the race associated with the school's funding and budgets. I know it's a school committee recommendation, but maybe I misunderstood.
No, I didn't phrase that right. It
Okay.
just meant as a select board member, we don't have the same in-depth review
Right.
process of that budget that we do of the government side. So when I look at the government side of the budget, I'm confident in that I know what is what. With the
I
school,
understand.
I don't.
Right, okay, thank you for that, I understand. Great. I think one of the nice things that I've been gleaning from the last few meetings, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to be at the next one, I wish I could. You've asked some great questions about administration, which has allowed some dialogue to happen with that. And I think some of these questions have also sort of brought out some of the interconnectedness of the schools with some of the other departments. So last week we had the facilities manager, who I thought did a great job in her explanation. One of the things that Mike had said was that when he pointed out that 80% of the calls are for the schools, for repair calls, which he said seemed wildly inefficient. And I agree with him. That does seem wildly inefficient, but it gave the facilities manager, I think, the opportunity to point out that so many of the activity happens in the schools. There's just literally thousands of people there, and there's children. So I think that these questions are great because even though there is a separateness by design of school budget and government budget, there's a lot of tentacles that sort of connect the two, and there are implications. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. I think it's really important. And then just a question, just because it was brought up for my own curiosity, the PFAS medication. That's the wrong expression. The PFAS mitigation. When that comes up, is that? Do you guys know? Is that paid for? It's paid for by the taxpayers, but is it paid for by? Does it have any proportionality to the water, to people's use of water? Okay, you're nodding, but you're shaking your head.
That's going to be discussed on Monday night.
Yes.
Okay.
Will have
So-
some impact.
So here's why I'm asking, because there was another point that Mike brought up, and Mike is intentionally not looking at me, which I'm not trying to pick on him, but he brought up a really interesting point, and Cindy, you added to it. So there was something around the dump. I live by the dump, so I can call it the dump, the transfer station. If you don't use the transfer station, should you be having to pay for the transfer station? You talked about private school. I would add something, since PFAS mitigation is going to be coming up. I would ask you to consider, what if you don't have access to the dump? What if for some reason you didn't have access to the dump? Should you pay for the dump? And here's why I say this. Some of you may remember that 10 years ago, the Fiscal Advisory Committee saw fit to not entertain my question around allowing the 6 houses that are around my house. I call it the glamour zone. I live on Mayflower Street by the dump. We don't have access to town water. I asked for it, but we didn't see fit to pay for it. I do not have access to town power. I am a community member. I love all you guys. I love being part of the community. If it comes to it, personally, I'm happy to pay for your PFAS mitigation. But I don't have water. I have an erector set in my basement. It's like Breaking Bad. So I don't have to pay for water, but I might have to pay for your health. So that's fine with me, but we do have a lot of people in this community. I don't know what a lot is. There's 6 on Mayflower Street. We keep putting up buildings in Mayflower Street, like sheds and crematoriums, and it's becoming a really beautiful street to live on. But there are other streets and there are other other neighborhoods in this town that do not have access to water. I would ask yourself, is it fair for those people to pay for the benefits of other people? That brings up the kindergarten question and a lot of other stuff. So, at any rate, little
It is
kind of
interesting.
inception there. I just
We
wanted
don't talk
the
about
third
this
level
yet.
of inception, so.
I will let you know that one of the concepts to pay for PFAS would be to have it be paid for using the retained earnings from the water department. So
Yes.
it
But
would
that's
be-
not
it
going to
would-
be enough.
It would be paid for by the people that actually use the system.
Well,
With the rate increases, it
Not,
might
not
be.
in totality, from
Nope,
what
but-
what
but
I...
certainly a portion of
But
it.
certainly a portion of it, and you raise a good question, and the Board of Health actually has a list of every residence in town that does not have access to town water. So it is on their radar, they do know. It's my understanding that letters have been sent to those homeowners about PFAS and making sure you're checking your wells, and so my understanding is that
Yeah.
those, they have been designated.
Well, I'm glad they have a list, because once my reservoir dries up, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I just gotta go to Ocean State and buy a bottle of water, so. Anyway, thank you for listening and considering another bigger question.
All
Thank you,
right,
have a good
do
night.
we have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor?
Motion to adjourn.
We're done, thank you.
All in favor?
And thank, you know, I'm looking out here and I'm